July 24, 1944. Normandy, France. The morning sun glints off the armored hulls scattered across the bocage countryside. Mist rises from hedgerows, twisting with the roar of approaching engines. A single Sherman tank rumbles forward, its treads chewing through churned earth, dust rising like smoke signals in the bright light. Inside, the commander squints through the sights, lips pressed tight, hands steady on the controls. Ahead, a line of German Panzers glints between hedgerows, Tigers and Panzer Eifers, their steel massive and menacing. The radio chatter hums with tension, reports of movement, ammunition checks, and hesitant advice from nearby crews. He adjusts the gun, not by the book, but by instinct. A stupid alignment, as one of his men would later whisper, shaking his head. The barrel tilts slightly, unapproved, but somehow purposeful. A whistle of wind carries the scent of hot oil and burning fuel. The enemy hasn't noticed the subtle change yet, but in moments, it will decide the fate of the entire column. Every nerve is taut. Every decision matters. One miscalculation could destroy them all, or create legend. By mid-1944, Normandy had become a labyrinth of hedgerows, sunken lanes, and fortified villages. Allied forces were pressing inland from the beaches, and German panzer divisions remained the most formidable obstacle. The panzers, particularly the Tiger I and Panzer IV, were engineering marvels of destructive capability. Their thick armor, powerful 80mm guns, and tactical coordination made them nearly invincible in frontal engagements. For the Allies, Sherman tanks were the backbone of armored operations. Fast, reliable, and abundant, they were nevertheless outmatched in firepower and armor. A frontal assault against a Tiger or well-positioned panzer column was often suicidal. Commanders relied on maneuver, surprise, and tactical ingenuity to level the playing field. The war in Normandy was no longer just about brute force. It was a contest of calculation, anticipation, and sometimes improvisation. Tank crews endured punishing conditions. Heat, noise, and the constant threat of sudden death wore on even seasoned soldiers. The treads of their machines chewed up farmland, leaving behind churned mud that slowed movement and betrayed positions. Mechanics worked endlessly, patching holes, tuning engines, and replacing worn components under the harsh sun. Beyond the mechanical challenges, crews faced psychological pressure. A single misjudgment in gun alignment, angle of approach, or timing could lead to annihilation. Every mission was a gamble, not just with lives, but with steel and ammunition. Young commanders quickly learned that victory relied on understanding not just their own tank, but the enemy's strengths, weaknesses, and predictable patterns. Reports from prior engagements emphasized the lethality of German armored doctrine. Panzer columns moved in coordinated formations, using overlapping fields of fire and interlocking defensive positions. Their crews were disciplined, trained to exploit even minor mistakes by opposing tankers. Shermans could survive hits, but their rounds often bounced harmlessly off thick armor, leaving crews exposed and vulnerable. This imbalance forced a cultural shift among Allied tankers. Field modifications, slight mechanical adjustments, and tactical deviations became more than innovations. They became survival tools. Crews experimented with gun elevation, targeting angles, and even subtle adjustments to turret rotation, all in hopes of finding an edge. Official doctrine discouraged such deviations, warning of structural failure or misfires, yet the realities of combat demanded experimentation. One particular commander, a young officer whose name would later be remembered only in fragments of declassified reports, approached the problem differently. He studied the panzers not just as adversaries, but as puzzles of steel. Observing angles, distances, and the behavior of shells in field trials, he began formulating methods to exploit predictable armor weaknesses. His solution would not come from manuals or regulations, but from instinct and audacity. Under the blazing Normandy sun, his crew prepared their Sherman for a mission that would test everything they had learned. They adjusted suspension, checked tracks, and reviewed firing protocols. Yet in the back of their minds lingered the knowledge that conventional tactics would not suffice. The line of Panzers they were about to face was formidable. Experienced crews, perfect formation, and weapons that could obliterate their tanks in seconds. It was in this crucible of pressure, uncertainty, and ingenuity that the stage was set. The commander's mind focused on one critical variable: the gun alignment. Not standard calibration, not procedural adjustment, but a slight, daring deviation. A stupid alignment that, on paper, defied logic. Yet the consequences of hesitation were clear. Failure would mean destruction. Precision, courage, and innovation were the only paths to survival. Every detail mattered. The angle of approach, the timing of the first shot, the concealment of the Sherman's movement behind terrain features. The hedgerows became shields and obstacles alike, their dense foliage both a cover and a trap. Every second in preparation felt like an eternity. But the tank commander understood one immutable truth. Ingenuity could turn an underpowered vehicle into a weapon capable of toppling giants. The Panzer column moving through Normandy was a study in disciplined efficiency. Tigers led the formation, their 80mm guns poised to punish any approaching Allied armor. Behind them, Panzer IVs formed supporting ranks, their crews trained to protect the flanks, coordinate fire, and maintain momentum through even the densest terrain. Reconnaissance had tracked their approach for hours, noting predictable intervals and formation spacing. For Allied commanders, every detail could be exploited, if only one had the courage and insight to see it. Sherman crews were acutely aware of their limitations. Their 75mm guns could penetrate light armor, but Tiger frontal plates could shrug off most rounds. Tactical doctrine emphasized maneuver, flanking, ambush positions, and coordinated fire. But these were difficult to execute under Normandy's restrictive hedgerows. Tanks often became trapped in narrow lanes, limited by visibility and terrain. Improvisation was not just advantageous, it was essential. This environment fostered a culture of innovation. Crews experimented with slight mechanical tweaks, adjusting turret rotation tension for faster tracking, rebalancing the gun cradle to reduce recoil drift, or even modifying sights to compensate for perceived inaccuracy. Small adjustments, invisible to inspectors but profound in combat, could shift the outcome of an engagement. For the young Sherman commander, these incremental innovations were only the beginning. He analyzed every German tactic, every likely trajectory, and every blind spot along the Panzer's armor. He calculated ranges at which his rounds would be most effective, angles where even a Tiger could be penetrated, and maneuvers that would mask his approach until the last possible moment. Field intelligence was limited, but careful observation revealed patterns. German crews relied on predictability, fixed formations, standardized intervals, and pre-planned responses to ambushes. The Sherman commander recognized that breaking this rhythm, even subtly, could generate decisive advantage. Every crew member was aware of the stakes. Tank warfare in Normandy was brutal, and the Sherman's deficiencies meant that one misjudged turn or misaligned shot could spell disaster. Yet there was also a palpable sense of opportunity. The commander's plan was audacious, a minor, unconventional gun alignment that would allow him to strike the Panzer column's most vulnerable points in rapid succession. The mechanics assisting him were skeptical but compliant. Such an adjustment was technically outside regulations and could risk barrel damage or turret failure. But in practice, the Sherman had tolerated countless field modifications without catastrophic failure. In the heat of combat, hesitation could kill. Bold action could win. Other crews observed quietly, Sensing that something unusual was happening, the Sherman's gun was slightly offset, the barrel angled differently from standard alignment. On paper, it was stupid. In reality, it was a precise application of geometry, physics, and battlefield intuition. It offered a chance to hit points the Panzer's armor might otherwise deflect, and to engage multiple targets before the enemy could respond effectively. As the sun climbed higher, dust from other units' movements coated the fields. Every shift of the hedgerows and sunken lanes altered the approach angles. The commander ran through mental simulations, shot timing, turret tracking, recoil compensation, and escape paths. Every variable had to be accounted for because there was no margin for error. By mid-morning, the Panzer column was within striking distance. The Shermans had assumed concealed positions behind hedgerows, their engines idling, treads barely moving. The commander checked instruments, verified crew readiness, and gave silent signals. Each soldier understood the plan, the risk, and the potential reward. This was the crucible in which one small mechanical adjustment, seemingly foolish, defying standard doctrine, would be tested. Every decision, every second, would determine whether this Sherman would survive or whether the Panzer column would crush it and its crew. In this tense, sunlit countryside, under the bright summer sky, ingenuity and audacity were poised to collide with brute steel and experience. The stage was set for an engagement that would become legend. The moment when one tank commander's stupid gun alignment would meet an entire Panzer column in the open battlefield of Normandy. He was young, barely in his mid-20s, but his mind carried the weight of experience far beyond his years. The Normandy hedgerows had already taken a toll on him. Endless days of vigilance, nights of little rest, and the constant knowledge that a single miscalculation could obliterate his crew and machine. Yet in him burned a quiet determination to survive, to adapt, and to find advantage where others saw only limitation. Within the Sherman's cramped interior, the commander's senses were stretched to their limits. He could feel every vibration of the treads, hear the subtle whine of the turret's gears, and sense the slightest resistance when traversing uneven terrain. Every instinct told him how the tank would respond to acceleration, braking, or a sudden turret rotation. For him, machinery wasn't inert metal. It was an extension of thought, a partner in battle. He had watched friends perish when rigid adherence to doctrine failed them. Every lost tank reinforced his conviction that survival demanded innovation. Small deviations, unapproved adjustments, and instinct-driven choices could mean the difference between annihilation and legend. His crew trusted him implicitly. They had to. In that trust, courage became collective, a shared rhythm of breathing, observation, and action. The Sherman tank, while reliable and mechanically robust, had significant limitations when facing the heavier Panzer series. Its 75mm main gun was often ineffective against frontal armor, and the turret rotation and recoil management imposed strict constraints on firing sequences. Experienced German crews exploited these weaknesses with deadly efficiency. The stupid gun alignment was a subtle but deliberate modification. Adjusting the barrel's angle by a mere degree or two outside official calibration altered the firing trajectory enough to target armor gaps, weak points on side plates, and junctions between the hull and turret. Areas that were vulnerable even on Tiger Thorns and Panzer IV tanks. On paper, it defied logic, but in practice, it increased the effective kill probability while allowing rapid follow-up shots. Mechanics assisting with the adjustment risked structural stress to the barrel and recoil system. A miscalculation could warp the gun or damage the turret ring, leaving the tank defenseless. Yet, when correctly applied, the adjustment improved tracking precision, reduced the effect of slight terrain-induced canting, and allowed the commander to exploit angles normally considered unreachable. This technical nuance, combined with careful observation of enemy formation patterns, created a tactical advantage. Unlike conventional calibration, which prioritized standardization, the adjustment leveraged localized field knowledge, battlefield intuition, and mechanical finesse. It turned a perceived flaw into a decisive weapon, an example of innovation born from necessity. Each engagement following the adjustment was both experiment and survival test. The commander relied on instinct honed through months of observation and the subtle mechanical cues from the Sherman. Every turn, every turret rotation, every shot sequence became a measured risk. The crew learned to anticipate these adjustments, forming a symbiotic rhythm with the tank and its commander. The radio operator, loader, and driver became extensions of the same mind, executing maneuvers faster and more accurately than manuals prescribed. Other crews noticed the difference. When the Sherman moved into position, it behaved unpredictably, capable of firing angles thought impossible, responding to terrain irregularities with agility that seemed beyond the tank's design. Rumors began circulating. One tank could take on a Panzer column, exploiting precision and timing in ways others had never seen. The human element and the technical modification fused into a single operational entity. Neither the commander's audacity nor the gun alignment alone would have sufficed. Only together, guided by observation, trust, and courage, could the Sherman achieve what followed. In this synthesis of mind and machine, small acts of ingenuity were magnified into tactical advantage. The stupid gun alignment was more than a mechanical tweak. It was a calculated gamble that redefined what one tank could accomplish on the battlefield. Armored warfare in Normandy was a battle of angles, timing and terrain exploitation. A single hedge, a sunken lane, or a patch of churned earth could decide whether a tank survived or was obliterated. For the Sherman commander, conventional doctrine offered no guarantee against the Panzer column. Tigers and Panzerifis advanced in disciplined formations, overlapping fields of fire covering every approach. Any frontal engagement was perilous. The stupid gun alignment became a tactical instrument. By slightly offsetting the barrel, the commander could fire at weak points before the enemy anticipated his aim. This small adjustment allowed him to execute rapid, angled shots while remaining partially concealed behind terrain. It disrupted the Panzer crew's expectations of timing, distance, and trajectory. Moreover, the Sherman's unconventional approach enabled rapid repositioning. Unlike standard procedure, which required alignment with the tank's axis, this method allowed lateral shots while maneuvering, exploiting gaps in the enemy's formation. In essence, the tank became more than a machine. It became a flexible weapon system capable of improvisation in real time. The tactic capitalized on the predictable patterns of German armored doctrine. By observing spacing, turn sequences, and response delays, the commander transformed a single Sherman into a mobile strike unit capable of sequentially disabling multiple Panzers without being targeted effectively. From the German side, confusion spread quickly. Panzer crews were trained to engage predictable threats, advancing in formation, responding to frontal or flanking attacks according to manuals drilled into muscle memory. The Sherman's unorthodox movement violated these patterns. Reports from surviving German crews described a tank that fired from angles previously thought impossible, disappearing behind hedgerows only to strike again from unexpected positions. The subtle deviation in gun alignment created uncertainty in aiming calculations, wasted shots, and delayed counterattacks. In short, a single, seemingly foolish adjustment forced experienced crews into a defensive posture they had not anticipated. Some officers recognized the significance but lacked the flexibility to adapt. Their doctrine, rigid and disciplined, could not account for such improvisation. The effect was psychological as much as physical. Morale faltered as each Tiger or Panzer IV fell in sequence, leaving the remaining crews wary, reactive, and hesitant. The commander's choice to adjust the gun risked disciplinary action. Military regulations prohibited unauthorized modifications to armament, citing structural integrity, safety, and procedural consistency. Yet leadership at the tactical level faced a dilemma. Punish a subordinate for rule-breaking or acknowledge that audacity had saved lives and destroyed enemy assets. Within the crew, moral authority stemmed from results, not orders. The commander's judgment inspired trust and confidence. Each soldier understood that the deviation was calculated, not reckless, and that their survival depended on following his lead without question. The implicit moral contract, obedience in exchange for protection and success, strengthened cohesion. Across the unit, whispers of the stupid gun alignment circulated. Other commanders noted the outcome and faced their own ethical calculations. Should they encourage similar improvisation, risking equipment failure, or enforce strict compliance at the expense of initiative? The success of one Sherman challenged the rigid hierarchy of armored doctrine, suggesting that innovation, courage, and careful risk-taking were as critical as firepower or armor. Together, these perspectives illustrate the unique confluence of factors that made the Sherman's success possible. Human ingenuity, technical modification, tactical exploitation, enemy miscalculation, and moral leadership combined to produce a moment that shifted the battlefield. The tank's performance was not magic. It was the product of observation, instinct, courage, and subtle engineering innovation. In essence, one seemingly stupid decision, an unauthorized adjustment to gun alignment, became the focal point where all elements of warfare converged. It challenged expectations, disrupted doctrine, and forced both sides to confront the unpredictable consequences of battlefield innovation. This convergence set the stage for the decisive engagement that would define the legend. The actual confrontation with the Panzer column. Every advantage gained from observation, preparation, and adjustment would now be tested in real combat. July 21st, 1944, late morning. Normandy countryside. The sun had climbed higher, casting long shadows across the hedgerows. Dust and churned earth obscured patches of the battlefield, making the distant rumble of the approaching Panzer column feel both near and far. The Sherman rolled forward, engine throbbing, treads gripping the uneven ground. Inside, the commander checked his crew one last time. The radio operator nodded, loader gripped shells, and the driver adjusted the throttle with steady hands. The gun, subtly misaligned, was locked in a position that, on paper, violated every regulation. Yet in that position, it offered angles the enemy could not anticipate. Through binoculars, the commander spotted the leading Panzer foes. Tigers followed, their massive turrets sweeping in coordination. Crews had trained for years, expecting standard approaches. They would not expect this. The first round fired was a test, calculated to gauge the response and the distance. The slight offset of the barrel allowed the shell to hit a junction of turret and hull armor. A weak spot no standard approach would have achieved. The Panzer shuddered under the impact. Crew shocked, fire erupting from the engine compartment. Immediately, the column's formation faltered. The Sherman shifted behind a small rise, repositioning without exposing itself fully. Another shot found the flank of a Tiger, penetrating the side armor and igniting ammunition inside. German crews scrambled, attempting coordinated return fire. But the Sherman's unconventional angle made targeting unpredictable. Each engagement followed a rhythm, dictated not by doctrine, but by instinct. The commander observed every movement, anticipating turret rotation, adjusting for recoil, and firing precisely. The stupid gun alignment allowed rapid sequential targeting, one shot after another, exploiting armor gaps. Other Allied tanks watched in awe. The Sherman's maneuvers seemed impossible, rolling slightly while keeping the gun trained on successive targets, disappearing behind terrain, then reappearing for follow-up shots. Every successful hit spread confusion through the Panzer column. Smoke and dust rose in streaks across the fields. The deafening sound of cannon fire and clanking armor filled the air. Yet inside the Sherman, a calm focus prevailed. Every movement was measured, every round accounted for. The chaos outside became a controlled sequence of tactical precision. By mid-engagement, 3 panzers lay disabled, burning or overturned. The Germans attempted to regroup, but their predictable formations had been shattered. The offset barrel, audacious, stupid to any regulator, turned the Sherman into a mobile hammer, striking points no other Allied tank could reach. The crew's coordination mirrored the machine's flexibility. Loader passed shells at a rhythm synchronized with the commander's firing. Driver adjusted speed and angle with subtle precision. Radio operator relayed intermittent enemy signals. Human skill and mechanical adaptation merged seamlessly. The commander took a calculated risk. He advanced slightly beyond cover to target the 4th Panzer. The Tiger's main gun tracked him, but delayed reaction gave the Sherman a fractional advantage. A single shot struck a rear flank, igniting fuel and ammunition. Explosions erupted, scattering debris across the field. Other panzers began to retreat in disarray. Coordination collapsed as the unexpected threat created hesitation and overcompensation. The Sherman, maintaining its unconventional gun alignment, pursued opportunistic shots while avoiding exposure. In under 20 minutes, half of the column had been neutralized or forced to withdraw. Mechanics later reviewed the footage and reports, noting the extraordinary strain on the turret and recoil systems. The gun and chassis had endured stress far beyond regulation limits, yet structural failure had been avoided. Every inch of the adjustment, every moment of calculation, had paid off. Witnesses from adjacent units described the scene. A single Sherman dismantling an armored column with uncanny precision, bullets and shells striking where theory suggested failure. It was audacity and innovation in motion. The stupid gun alignment had turned the improbable into reality. By late morning, the battlefield quieted. Smoke rose in plumes. The surviving panzers withdrew under chaos and confusion. Allied casualties were minimal, and morale soared. In one tank, a seemingly foolish adjustment had shifted the balance of armored engagement, demonstrating that ingenuity, observation, and courage could overcome superior firepower. The Sherman's engine rattled as it retreated to regroup, gun still slightly offset. The commander allowed himself a brief exhale. The column was shattered. The legend of one tank, one crew, and one daring adjustment had been born. The aftermath of the first engagement did not bring relief. Dust hung thick in the Normandy air, mingling with smoke from overturned panzers. The Sherman's crew remained alert, scanning hedgerows, lanes, and sunken tracks for movement. The remaining German tanks were still a threat. Hesitation could allow them to regroup, strike, or call for reinforcements. The commander studied the battlefield through binoculars. He noted the disarray. Tigers and Panzer IVs attempting to reorient, crews shouting orders, engines revving in frustration. The offset gun alignment, still labeled stupid by any regulation, had created openings that conventional tactics could not exploit. One calculated shot could destroy or disable a tank in sequence, breaking the enemy's cohesion entirely. The crew executed the next maneuver with precision. The Sherman rolled laterally behind cover, barrel trained on a gap in the German formation. Another round struck a Panzer IV's turret ring, igniting fuel lines. Smoke and fire marked each hit, disorienting enemy crews further. Observing the effect, the commander adjusted barrel angle slightly, compensating for terrain and recoil, a continuous calibration that would be impossible under standard procedure. German forces attempted countermeasures. A Tiger swung its turret and fired, but the Sherman's offset barrel and rapid repositioning kept it outside the effective kill zone. Each misfired shot and delayed reaction compounded confusion. The Panzer crews had trained for predictable engagements, But no manual accounted for a tank firing with such unorthodox angles and timing. The psychological impact was immediate. The remaining German crews hesitated, unsure whether the Sherman represented a single tank exploiting weakness or a coordinated ambush. Hesitation in battle is deadly. It allowed the Sherman to methodically target each Panzer in turn. The commander leveraged this uncertainty, knowing that one misjudgment by the enemy could be decisive. Within minutes, the Sherman had neutralized the majority of the column. Panzer formations broke apart, some tanks retreating in disarray, others abandoned by panicked crews. Allied tanks observing from flanks noted the extraordinary efficiency. One machine had accomplished what many units could not. Mechanics later examined the Sherman and marveled at the stress endured by the turret and recoil system. Field modifications often risked catastrophic failure, yet here, careful observation, instinct, and precise execution had allowed the machine to operate beyond its theoretical limits. The combination of human skill and technical improvisation had produced results that defied expectation. Word of the engagement spread quickly. Adjacent Allied units recorded the effectiveness of the Sherman's unconventional gun alignment. Some skeptics initially dismissed the story, attributing success to luck or German incompetence. However, post-battle analysis confirmed that the tactical advantage was real. An offset barrel, executed by an observant and daring commander, allowed sequential targeting of multiple enemy tanks, overwhelming a superior force. The Sherman crew returned to their staging area, engines rattling, treads leaving deep furrows in the earth. The commander allowed a rare moment of relief, acknowledging the narrow margin between success and disaster. Behind the relief was a sobering recognition. Innovation in combat carries risk, but the proper application of knowledge, observation, and courage can redefine outcomes. Commanders at higher echelons would later review reports. The official language remained cautious, omitting the mechanical adjustment, citing the skillful use of terrain and timing. Yet within the unit, the tale of the stupid gun alignment became legend. Soldiers recounted the event with awe, emphasizing the audacity, precision, and ingenuity required to dismantle an entire Panzer column with one Sherman. The battle's conclusion did not mark an end, but a turning point. It highlighted the importance of adaptation, quick thinking, and intimate understanding of both machinery and enemy behavior. The Sherman's success demonstrated that under the right conditions, audacious improvisation could overcome seemingly insurmountable odds. In the bright Normandy afternoon, the battlefield bore silent witness. Smoke drifted over broken hedgerows, blackened tracks etched the earth, and the rumble of retreating enemy tanks faded into the distance. One tank, guided by a daring mind and unconventional adjustment, had turned a desperate gamble into decisive victory. The engagement would ripple across units, influencing tactics, boosting morale, and seeding a quiet revolution in armored combat. The legend of the stupid gun alignment became a symbol of ingenuity, a testament to the difference one bold decision could make in the midst of war. In the hours and days following the battle, the impact of the Sherman's unorthodox engagement became evident. The Panzer column had been neutralized with minimal Allied casualties, a result that defied expectation. Commanders and crews across the sector noted the remarkable efficiency of one tank against multiple enemy vehicles. Reports described a combination of precise timing, careful observation, and mechanical ingenuity, though the specific gun adjustment remained unrecorded in official logs. The battlefield itself bore the scars of this encounter. Burnt-out Panzer hulls, twisted tracks, and blackened earth marked the Sherman's path. Each destroyed tank represented more than just a tactical victory. It was a blow to German morale and a demonstration of Allied adaptability. Nearby units drew inspiration, noting that calculated risks, when executed with discipline and understanding of the machine, could achieve disproportionate results. Within the Sherman crew, pride mingled with cautious relief. They had survived against overwhelming odds, and in doing so, had redefined the limits of their tank. The stupid gun alignment, once a whispered joke, became a symbol of field innovation. Crew members recounted the action with admiration, emphasizing how instinct, observation, and daring coordination had created a decisive advantage. Commanders recognized a subtle shift in armored warfare culture. Field improvisation, previously discouraged, gained tacit acceptance. The engagement demonstrated that rigid adherence to manuals could be a liability when facing an adaptive and experienced enemy. Crews who had previously feared experimentation began to consider minor, calculated adjustments as essential survival tools. Mechanics and engineers observed the practical results with intrigue. Though the adjustment pushed the turret and recoil system beyond standard specifications, no catastrophic failures occurred. In fact, the tank had performed more effectively than regulations suggested possible. Lessons drawn from this encounter would later influence maintenance protocols, operational training, and subtle design considerations in subsequent Allied tanks. The psychological impact on German forces was immediate. Reports from surviving Panzer crews described confusion and hesitation. Standard doctrine had failed to account for unorthodox targeting angles and rapid, unpredictable maneuvering. The disruption of formation cohesion reduced effectiveness and forced retreat. The legend of a single Sherman dismantling a column spread through local reports and whispers among enemy units, sowing doubt and fear. Strategically, the engagement reinforced the value of intelligence, observation, and tactical creativity. Allied units began analyzing enemy patterns more carefully, emphasizing flexibility over rigid procedure. The battle demonstrated that small innovations could create outsized effects, particularly in environments where terrain limited conventional advantage. Beyond immediate tactical results, the encounter fostered cohesion and trust within the Sherman crew. The commander's audacity, combined with clear communication and disciplined execution, reinforced the crew's confidence. They learned that measured risk, guided by observation and understanding of their vehicle's capabilities, could yield extraordinary outcomes. The battle also influenced broader unit behavior. Adjacent crews began experimenting with minor adjustments in angles, firing sequences, and positioning. While never officially documented as doctrine, these improvisations reflected a shift toward adaptive thinking. The stupid gun alignment became emblematic, an example of how ingenuity, when combined with skill and discipline, could turn a desperate situation into victory. As Allied operations continued through Normandy, the lessons from this engagement echoed across units. Commanders encouraged careful observation, flexible tactics, and creative problem-solving. The Sherman's success served as a benchmark, proving that even underpowered or outgunned vehicles could achieve remarkable outcomes when human initiative intersected with mechanical understanding. By the end of the week, the sector had stabilized. The Panzer threat in the immediate area was diminished, and morale among Allied armored units soared. Yet beyond the statistics of destroyed vehicles and minimized casualties, a deeper truth had been established. Survival and success often depended less on brute force than on ingenuity, observation, and the courage to act against convention. The stage was now set for reflection on the broader implications, for armored doctrine, for morale, and for the enduring legend of one Sherman, one crew, and one stupid gun alignment that had altered the course of a battle. The consequences of the engagement extended beyond immediate battlefield success. The destruction and disarray inflicted on the Panzer column reverberated through German command. Reports noted that a single Sherman had wrought havoc with precision, previously thought impossible. German units began recalibrating their approach, hesitant to advance in standard formations without additional reconnaissance. The psychological impact of an unpredictable opponent cannot be overstated. Fear and uncertainty spread faster than bullets across the hedgerows. Within Allied forces, The story of the Sherman's stupid gun alignment became a touchstone. Though the adjustment itself remained unofficial, the results inspired both crews and commanders to consider the value of field improvisation. Experienced officers began to encourage subordinate initiative, understanding that rigid adherence to doctrine could stifle opportunities in dynamic battlefield conditions. The engagement demonstrated that audacity, when guided by observation and technical understanding, could produce decisive outcomes. The Sherman crew experienced both pride and humility. They had survived against overwhelming odds, but they also recognized the narrow margins separating success from catastrophe. Each decision, from gun alignment to positioning behind terrain, had been critical. The crew understood that in the chaos of armored warfare, even the smallest adjustment could tip the balance. Engineering insights from the battle influenced future armored doctrine. Analyses showed that slight, controlled deviations in gun alignment could increase hit probability on heavily armored targets without catastrophic mechanical risk. Designers incorporated lessons into post-war and late-war Sherman upgrades, refining turret mechanisms and sighting systems to allow greater flexibility while maintaining structural integrity. The encounter highlighted the potential of adaptive thinking in armored design and tactical execution. For the German forces, the defeat carried both tactical and symbolic weight. The apparent randomness and efficiency of the Sherman's assault undermined confidence in Panzer tactics. Officers reported that their formations had been disrupted not by overwhelming firepower, but by ingenuity and observation. It was a lesson in vulnerability. Even the most disciplined and heavily armored units could be neutralized by unorthodox strategies, applied with precision and courage. The engagement also influenced morale and culture within Allied armored units. Crews began sharing methods of subtle field modification, discussing angles, adjustments, and tactical maneuvers previously ignored. The stupid gun alignment became a metaphor for calculated risk, creativity under pressure, and the importance of observation over brute force. This cultural shift would echo in subsequent operations, reinforcing that innovation and initiative were as vital as training or equipment. Over time, historians would examine the encounter, noting its significance beyond simple statistics. While the official reports understated the mechanical adjustment, the analysis of timing, trajectory, and battlefield effect highlighted the critical role of human decision-making in armored warfare. The Sherman's success illustrated how one individual's insight, executed under extreme pressure, could reshape tactical expectations and influence both immediate outcomes and future operational thinking. By the end of the campaign, the Panzer threat in the area was largely neutralized. Allied forces advanced with renewed confidence, inspired by the demonstration that innovation and courage could compensate for inferior numbers or firepower. The lessons of the Sherman's engagement informed training programs, emphasizing observation, initiative, and flexibility in both tactical and technical dimensions. Ultimately, the stupid gun alignment served as a reminder that warfare is not solely determined by material superiority. Human ingenuity, precise calculation, and bold action often determine outcomes as effectively as armor or artillery. The battlefield had rewarded those willing to think differently, to challenge convention, and to trust their instincts when circumstances demanded it. History often celebrates the grand battles, the generals and the numbers, tanks deployed, rounds fired, and divisions destroyed. Yet, some of the most profound victories arise from ingenuity, observation, and courage in the face of overwhelming odds. The Sherman commander's stupid gun alignment is one such story, a quiet act of defiance against standard procedure that reshaped the battlefield in an instant. The adjustment itself was minor, almost imperceptible, yet its consequences were monumental. It demonstrated that survival in war often depends not on superior firepower, but on human creativity, adaptability, and trust in instinct. In a world of manuals, doctrine, and predictable formations, One individual's observation and audacity created a decisive advantage that conventional strategies could not achieve. The story also underscores the inseparable link between man and machine. The Sherman was not merely a tool, it was an extension of the commander's mind, reacting to terrain, enemy movement, and split-second calculation. The stupid alignment transformed the tank into a flexible, adaptive weapon. A reminder that technology amplifies ingenuity, but cannot replace it. Beyond technical and tactical implications, the engagement had profound cultural resonance. Crews learned that careful risk-taking, innovation, and trust could redefine outcomes. Rigid adherence to doctrine gave way to adaptive thinking. The legend of a single Sherman dismantling a Panzer column became a symbol of courage, collaboration, and the enduring human capacity to solve problems under pressure. Ultimately, the story reminds us that warfare is as much about imagination and initiative as it is about steel and firepower. Small acts of ingenuity, applied with precision and audacity, can ripple through history, influencing tactics, morale, and technological development. The battlefield rewards those who observe, calculate, and dare, and in doing so, it transforms not just a single engagement, but the way war is waged, remembered, and understood. In the sunlit fields of Normandy, amid hedgerows and churned earth, one tank and its crew proved that courage guided by intelligence can turn the improbable into legend. And that lesson, quiet, daring, and enduring, remains as relevant today as it was on that summer morning in 1944.